Hey guys, and welcome to the Aselica review. So, Aselica is the second of the three heroes released in the News Batch of Heroes 2 weeks ago, Shay, Aselica, and Crow, and she is a tank. Just similar to Arch, she is a angel or a seraphim. She is a winged human who's come from the high righteous heavens to punish evil with her sword and protect the weak with her shield. She is pretty much a valkyrie, and her skills are pretty interesting. They're nothing special for tank skills, but her second skill is notable. So the first skill is Sword of the Sun. It's a very basic tank skill, deals 183,000 magic damage to an enemy and surrounding enemies within range, and inflicts stun for 3 seconds. Once you have maxed out this skill with skill books, this becomes a 5-second stun on a 9-second cooldown, and one of her Transcendence perks allows her to reduce that cooldown by another 2 seconds, which means you can have a 5-second stun on a 7-second cooldown, AoE, which is not bad. Her second skill is probably her most useful skill, Blessing of the Sun. Imbues the Blessing of the Sun to the ally with the highest attack, reducing cooldown of all skills by 20% and increasing attack by 30,644 for 15 seconds. So, to start off with, this is a pretty huge boost. 30,000 attack is nothing to sneeze at, and it only gets better when you get skill books on it. As an extra 40% of that, it makes it about 43,000 attack. Now, what makes Aselica really good is one of her Transcendence perks, Blessing the Sun Light, increases the mana cost by 1, but grants the effect to the 2 allies with the highest attack. If you're like me and you like running double DPS comps, Ezekiel Marianne in my personal case, this means that both your DPS are now getting 40,000 extra attack and are free to just go to town, doing extremely high damage. I combo that with the other new hero, Shay, whose third skill, Dance of the Red Passion, increases attack by 56,000, then another 40%, and doubles that during one of her other abilities. So Aselica's second skill is definitely her bread and butter. It's one of the main reasons you bring her over other tanks, but her third skill is also pretty important. Aselica's third skill is a magic shred that is a flat shred. The majority of magical shreds in this game, skills that shred magical defenses, are percentage based. They will shred 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 or even 50% of a unit's magical defenses. Judgment of the Sun, her third skill, instead takes position, focuses to heal HP of nearby allies excluding self. It does this 8 times for a total of 31,612, and increases their physical defense by 41,301 for 5 seconds. It also deals 35,000 magic damage to enemies within range 8 times, and decreases their magic defense by 22,794 for 5 seconds. At the end of the casting, heals HP of all allies within range, excluding herself, by about 200,000, and deals about 150,000 magic damage to enemies, knocking them down for 3 seconds. So important to note, this the magic defense and the physical defense, so the shred and the physical defense boost, are applied each time this hits, so it's 5 seconds plus any of the cast time, because this is a channeled skill. She will take her sweet time and channel this skill continuously. It looks amazing. I'll show you in a second. And then shreds the magical defense as she's doing so. She can also choose to take Judgment of the Sun Dark to increase the duration of the magical defense reduction effect by 5 seconds. So when I T4 her PvE build, which is I'm using Experienced Fighter, HP up because she's a tank, Experienced Fighter because I take her as my only tank, and then Blessing the Sun to make my damage dealers do more damage, then I would add Judgment of the Sun Dark to increase the duration of the magical defense shred. Finally, her dark perk, her T5 dark perk, I'll get to the perks in a second, but it's not that amazing. So I'm going to leave her at T4. Curse of the Sun is her passive. Upon attack, it inflicts Curse of the Sun on the target for 10 seconds. Enemies with 10 stacks of Curse of the Sun will consume the stack to receive 143,000 magic damage and become inflicted with Blind for 2 seconds, having their attack reduced by 20% for 5 seconds. So, putting skill books into this is pretty useless because Aselica's damage is already trash, but you don't bring her for damage, you bring her for utility. Curse of the Sun is another very useful passive. It gives a blind every time she manages to proc it on an enemy, which is pretty useful as blind can drastically increase the survivability of your team if it allows your opponents to miss key skills. For example, if Ra misses his Blade Claw and he's not using the skill 3 Dark perk for it, he is going to have his damage reduced massively. So blind is pretty nice, and it also reduces their attack by 20% for 5 seconds, which makes your team more survivable. So Aselica's skills, they're all fairly useful. Sword of the Sun is just a very simple bread and butter tank skill. AoE stun, that's all it is. Blessing of the Sun is pretty much the reason you bring Aselica along with Judgment of the Sun. The two of them allow your damage dealers to do a lot more damage, and the Magical Shred is pretty much unique among all tanks for flat Magical Shred. Curse of the Sun is just another very solid passive skill. It doesn't really stand out, but it also does not detract from her. It is just a very solid passive skill to have. Her Transcendence perks, the first two, I take HP up because she's a tank. Experienced Fighter, if you have another tank already taking this, for example, my Klaus, if I was running Aselica with Klaus, he already runs Experienced Fighter, so I could then instead just run Battlecry instead. And if you really need more block rate, Shield of Protection is actually pretty good for PvP. Blessing of the Sun Light is pretty much mandatory for Aselica in PvE content because it allows, especially World Boss, it allows your two top dealers to deal even more damage. Sword of the Sun, Light and Dark, neither of them are really that amazing. Sword of the Sun Light you can just ignore because damage Aselica, DPS Aselica, doesn't really work. She just does not have the damage to do it, no matter how much damage her passive does. Sword of the Sun Dark can be useful, especially in PvP, if you want to keep the enemy team continuously stunned. Her first skill does only have a mana cost of 2. It's a 5-second stun that goes down to a 7-second cooldown if you get Sword of the Sun Dark. Blessing of the Sun Dark can actually be pretty useful if you're running a single dealer that needs to be able to function. It removes harmful effects from the target. Now, I don't believe it gives them immunity, it only removes them. It cleanses them as Sword of the Sun. Is that Sword of the Sun? As Blessing of the Sun applies, it removes them. But it doesn't give immunity. But it's still pretty useful. But personally, because I run double dealers, Blessing of the Sun Light is much more useful for me. Judgment of the Sun Light reduces mana cost by 1, and this makes it a 3 mana skill. I use this in my Aselica's PvP build because how I use Aselica in PvP is instead of going for using her as a stun bot, I try to get Judgment of the Sun off as fast as possible and let my team go to town on the magical defense reduced enemies, and also buff my own team using Aselica and Shay. I'll get more into that in a different video though. Judgment of the Sun Dark is just a very good skill for PvE. It makes the duration last much longer, and it'll let your team abuse the window of power that Aselica gives them by casting it much more effectively. Curse of the Sun Light changes the attack reduction to 30%, which could be useful if you're really struggling to stay alive against a certain boss because their attack is just too huge. Curse of the Sun Dark activates the effect upon reaching the 7th stack of Curse of the Sun instead of the 10th stack. So this would be, if you wanted to run DPS Aselica, you'd probably want to run Curse of the Sun and Sword of the Sun Light. Her Dark skill, I'm not super impressed with it. It grants immunity to physical damage to one ally with the lowest HP every 15 seconds for 3 seconds. Aselica she's kind of like Klaus in that she basically gives the middle finger to physical damage comps. Her skills, like Judgment of the Sun, it gives her team a massive amount of physical defense. Her unique weapon, which I'll get to in a second, increases your main DPS's physical defense. And she's just good at messing with physical defense comps in general. This kind of continues that, but it's only got an uptime of 20%. 3 seconds every 15 seconds, an uptime of 20% just isn't really enough unless it procs exactly when a physical damage dealer hits your lowest HP target. But even then, Nyx, for example, who's still pretty prevalent in PvP, or Celine, both use a lot of AoE skills to kind of murder your team. So this really isn't going to save anyone unless you're getting hit by something like Crow's laser and you need to survive for exactly 2 to 3 seconds. Aselica Light, just like all light skills, it's just a fairly basic skill. Key to note that here though, if you take Aselica Light and Shield of Protection, you will reach the physical block soft cap without a single line of physical block on any of your gear, as 200 plus 300 is already 500, which is the physical block soft cap. And she already has a base physical block of 200 as a tank, so pretty huge. Actually, physical block soft cap, is that? Yeah, no, it's 50% or 500 is the physical block soft cap. So Aselica's Transcendence perks, they're not bad. For PvE, definitely Blessing of the Sun light if you're running a single double dealers, which you probably are in World Boss, and Judgment of the Sun dark to increase damage. Then Experienced Fighter, Battle Cry, and Shield of Protection are judgment calls based on if you already have a tank running Experienced Fighter, and if you feel you need Battle Cry, or if you want Aselica to survive better on her own. Personally, I feel Shield of Protection is more for PvP though. Her unique weapon is Solar Halo Ignatius. Its option is it makes a contract with the ally with the highest attack at the start of the first battle. It increases the target's physical defense by 6% of Aselica's physical defense, and also increases Aselica's attack by 6% of the target's attack. This effect cannot be dispelled. So basically what this does is it gives Aselica a small amount of attack. It gives 6% of your main dealer's attack, which should be about 6 to 12,000 depending on how many stars your main dealer's unique weapon has, and if you got perfect gear or not. The physical defense option is really what you're here for. It's nothing special, but Aselica's physical defense is pretty high. Mine, I don't run a bracelet or anything like that. I don't run P-Def on most of my things. I think I only have P-Def on the ring. Yep. And I've still got a P-Def of almost 38,000. So 6% of that is pretty significant. It's over 1,000 P-Def, or 1,000? Yeah, over 1,000 P-Def, which it's not a lot, but it's not nothing either. It does help out. But personally, Solar Halo Ignatius, you can definitely skip this. Just like most tank unique weapons, Aselica does not need her unique weapon. It's purely to increase her survivability so that she can do her job as a tank, really. It's just kind of a nice little extra to have if you do manage to pull it. I use mine because, well, I pulled it and I really like Aselica, so I'm not going to bother grinding that. So the way to use Aselica is pretty much you have your main DPS, and Aselica buffs the main DPS and then shreds enemies' magical defense and keeps them stunned using Sword of the Sun. Her skills, so she's a fairly basic tank. There's nothing super tough to figure out with her. She's not like Visca, where you've kind of got to figure out how a few things, different things interact. She's not like Sonya, where you kind of want to manage shock. All you really have to know is once she starts casting Judgment of the Sun here, that is your window to attack. And like you can see, it was applied for the entire duration, and then for 5 seconds afterwards, that magical defense shred is applied, and your team can feel free to go crazy and try to murder them. So this is her Blessing of the Sun right here. You can see which one, allies it applies to, because they get this really nice sort of rainbow bubble around them. Key to note here is reducing cooldown of all skills by 20%. I was super excited for this because I thought it reduced the base cooldown of the skills by 20%, which would mean if you have all your skills are 10-second cooldowns, they will refresh to 8-second cooldowns whenever you use that skill. That's not how this works. Blessing of the Sun, how it works, I think I can actually show you with Aselica here. So if I cast Sword of Light, and then Judgment of the Sun, and you can see this got a pretty long cast time. It's about 5 seconds. It reduces 20% of the skill's current cooldown. So if you watch carefully there, you can see it went from about 25 seconds to 20 seconds after she cast it, which means it's not very good on characters like Ezekiel, who have naturally low cooldowns, or Mirianne, but it's very good on characters like Shay, although Shay's not really going to be your main DPS, or Crow, who have naturally longer cooldowns, and who you want to reduce those cooldowns as much as possible. So I can show you one more time. You can see the cast. So I'll cast once, say it's 20-second cooldown. Unfortunately, the cooldown does start for this skill after she finishes casting, not during. So she casts it, and 20% is taken off, and it goes down to 15 seconds from 20 seconds. So it's still a very good skill. The attack boost alone makes it worth it, but it's not quite as good as you would hope from reading the skill. Still pretty good, though. especially because all her animations are really beautiful. Like, just the way she does that. They're all just really nice to watch. Like, she is aesthetically probably my favorite tank in the game. Like, I purchased her. I tried to convince myself using the cooldown reduction and the attack boost, and as well as the flat magic defense shred, which is pretty unique. But really, I purchased her because she is my absolute favorite looking tank in the game, even above Sonya. She looks great. Her skills all look and feel amazing. She's just a really nice character aesthetically and in terms of looking at her skills. So, should you get Aselica? Honestly, I'm going to say that I feel Aselica is a bit worse than Sonya. Not by much. I would say they're pretty similar, actually. Sonya is very good if you want a tank that can dish out damage and survive on her own very well. Sonya's second skill makes surviving a breeze. Her mini stuns from her second skill as well as her first skill, and then the big stun from her third skill, really help to disrupt your enemy's tempo, especially in PvP. The massive boost that Sonya gets from her second skill, Power of Lightning, like seriously, the attack and defense boosts she gets are insane. And Sonya is just a very self-sufficient tank. So Sonya is great if you want a tank that you don't really need to pay attention to. She'll just kind of survive on her own, stun the enemy team, and when she's got Shock Off, she also has some very nice synergies with other heroes such as Theo. Aselica, she kind of works with anyone really, even though Judgment of the Sun reduces magical defense. Blessing of the Sun just makes her amazing for any team with that huge attack boost. Like 40,000 attack is absolutely massive. It is one of the biggest attack boosts in the game, especially on a tank. And because she can apply that to 2 different heroes at once, she's really good at World Boss. Like my World Boss, I use Aselica as well as Sonya as my 2 tanks. They both help amp, they both help the team do more damage, and it's just a pretty nice combo to have. In PvP, Sonya is probably a bit better just because Sonya's little stuns really disrupt the enemy's front line, and her huge third skill is uninterruptible if you get the perk for it, and can really mess up both the front and back line. But personally, I like Aselica more because I feel that her Judgment of the Sun helps physical teams. Physical teams really can't do much to you when you're casting Judgment of the Sun. It just really, like, they'll attack you, they can use huge cooldowns, but unless they can break through all this extra physical defense, Judgment of the Sun is just too huge to really ignore. And the nice little heal at the end means that any of the damage the enemy team did do, it doesn't all get erased. It's only about, even with the perks, it's only about a 300,000 health heal. But 300,000 health is just enough to really put like a main DPS or a healer out of the danger range for a bit longer. It's about a 10% heal for a main DPS, as well as for healers that have their unique treasures or normal treasures that are unstarred. So it's just, I really find Aselica to be a great hero. Personally, I would suggest Sonya over Aselica if you want to do story mode. Aselica is good for story mode, like she's not going to drag you down, but Sonya is more survivable and transitions more easily to late game. And Sonya can also work on physical comps just as well, just because her amp can be changed to apply both physical and magical amp instead of just magical amp. But Aselica, great hero, by far my favorite tank in the game. I absolutely adore her. She's probably going to be T4 by me pretty soon. T5 will probably have to wait for a while, as my 4th T5 is currently reserved for Crow or a super amazing male archer if they decide to release one of those in the next batch of heroes before I get Crow's unique weapon. And yeah, she's just a really nice hero to have. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this sort of review and look at Aselica. She is, like I've been saying, an amazing looking hero. I really think Vespa hit it out of the park with this design, even if it's just a fairly simple Valkyrie / Angel design. Thanks for watching, subscribe if you liked it, and have a good one.